So interesting news today. Just to follow up on my story that I did the other day about women admitting that they were raped but not saying who raped them, and the effect that has on both men who rape women and never get accused, much less convicted, and women who get raped by them afterwards. Here's an interesting story that showed up on the New York Post today. Metro section, violent sex fiend linked to 3 rapes in DA's backlog initiative. A violent sex fiend who impersonated Family Ties actor Brian Bonsall to lure and rape a string of women was linked to 3 sex crimes as a result of the Manhattan District Attorney's sweeping rape backlog initiative. Now, the backlog, someone has to actually process the rape kit. So what happens is a lot of times a police organization will just store them on a shelf somewhere in a back room, in a storage locker, as evidence, is they just keep piling up and piling up over time instead of actually being processed.
Trump declares planes too complex to fly, even by trained professional pilots. They apparently now require not trained professional pilots, but computer science students from MIT to fly planes. Okay. While at the same time, Trump's opposing partner in this argument says that YouTube is making drones, killer drones, too easy to build. I guess, it's the computer scientists from MIT at work in both cases. So, okay, fine. So the next thing that we have here somehow, it's a good old-fashioned cheating scandal. So now we find that the elite parents of the country still want to make sure their kids get into good schools, good solid schools, get a good solid education, and most of all, get a good college alumni record, okay? I don't know if it's alumni record, but let's just say they go to a big name school, the best school they can get in, Georgetown, Yale, Harvard, whatever. This is as old as the hills, as old as time, as old as it's been colleges. But it's been taken now to such an extreme where we have cases of outright bribery, cheating on the SATs by having some smarter person take the SAT for them, and somehow the SAT system doesn't detect that this same guy has taken the SAT 50 times in a month, and I guess that's because he's using a fake ID, so apparently they still can't detect when someone else is taking a test for someone and claiming they're the other person. So then we have the sports slots that are taken by athletes to get an athletic scholarship. And then this is something I've been batting back and forth for a while. How do students get into colleges on an athletic scholarship when they wouldn't qualify to get in on their grades? So that means that there has to be a mixture of the fact that they're athletes and students. So there's a weighing, I guess, in certain cases because they're exceptional athletes, they get in even if their grades are not very good. And there's also a weighing the other way where certain students get in because they're exceptional students even if they're not athletic, right? So let's just raise the question. There's a weighing of factors involved for every school that has a contested incoming class, right? But whoever said it was fair? What is fair? What does fair mean? In any case, not to mention when it comes to admissions for colleges. How is it that these people, these 50 to 100 parents or couples or whatever, can spend, I don't know, maybe $24 million altogether with this one guy? There's this one other guy, this one smart guy from Harvard, brilliant person from Harvard who's taking all these SAT scores, getting top-notch grades, okay, and the other guy who's photoshopping the students or the applicants' heads onto the bodies of stock photos that they downloaded from the internet, or someone they pose like they're throwing a football or something like that. How is it possible that this is the scandal, yet we already have students from Stanford, students from community colleges, whatever. Okay, I guess everyone in New York, where now college is free, is okay with it. But let's just say all these students on the West Coast. How is it possible that they could have incurred $250 million worth of damages because their right to a fair application was denied? Since when does anyone have a right to a fair process when it comes to anything? I don't care what it is. If you want to go off on some weird tangent of talk about fairness or the lack of fairness in life, be my guest. I'm not even going to broach that whole topic, because we could talk about that for months, and everyone would bitch one way or bitch the other way. Everyone would have a biased opinion about what fair is and how fair should be done. Life is not fair. It is not fair. It's that simple. The judicial system in this country is not set up to talk about fairness or to ensure your fairness. It's set up to adjudicate questions of the law in the eyes of the juries and the justices and the Supreme Court lawyers, whatever, who look at the law, okay, and look at the history of the law according to Congress or whatever the legislative bodies are, and look at trends. They don't look at fairness, okay? This is a joke to hear these people talking about fairness. And certainly it was not fair for a white supremacist to plot a mass shooting on the internet, not alone, but with other people, okay? He then executed this mass shooting and streamed it on Facebook. After advertising that he was going to do this, these morons sat together on 8chan or whatever it is and said, hey, sounds like a good idea to me. What made you really decide to do this? It was like some kind of internet terrorist forum, okay? Except white guys, so therefore it was okay. If it had been Muslim guys or blacks or whatever, they would have had the FBI in like flying agents in there and local police and everything just to round this whole thing up. But as a white supremacist, somehow suddenly this actually goes through, not even under the radar, but in clear, open communication on the internet. Okay, this guy decides that he needs to protect the white race by going to New Zealand and shooting hundreds of people during prayer in cold blood to demonstrate that they're everywhere, even in New Zealand. Are we supposed to assume that there are no Muslims or Islamics in New Zealand? That we had to have this guy demonstrate this to us, not by taking pictures of them, but by shooting them down with automatic gunfire? This was necessary. Why is it that people are sitting around saying that white supremacists are good people? Okay? When at any moment, and historically this has happened, any moment they might just go off the rails and shoot tens or hundreds of people. Okay? They have done enough of this, more than enough of this, and they're being reinforced in the doing of this because they are all worried about white people, but not worried about anybody else except as a threat to white people. Okay? Is that rationale sane in any way? No. The only reason that such a rationale would make any sense to anyone is because they have such a high regard for white people that whatever anyone does to protect white people from non-whites is okay simply because they're protecting white people. If your sense of logic and values and ethics is that twisted, you are by definition a psychopath. a xenophobic psychopath. Okay? And the guy may have been right about one thing. Yeah, this is going to raise an issue about gun laws and the right to own guns, but it's not going to raise it in the United States. It'll raise it in New Zealand. It'll raise it in Australia. It's not going to raise the issue of Islamic immigration into New Zealand or Australia. It's going to raise the issue of white immigration into New Zealand and Australia. He's gotten one thing right, even though it's going to backfire on him. It's going to raise the issue of security and terrorism and threats and so forth from one religion to another, from one ethnic group against another, all around this planet, without a doubt. It's going to do it just as much as every other shooting by white supremacists did. And to think about this, on top of that, I don't think shooting 28 kids in Sandy Hook was an issue of white supremacy. I don't think shooting these kids in Columbine was an issue of white supremacy. It was an issue of a freaking idiotic kid going off the fucking rails. Nothing more.